Critical Blast, where pop culture gets blasted.
And welcome everybody to the Critical Blast Cavern. I am RJ Carter, Senior Managing Editor here at criticalblast.com, where pop culture gets blasted. And it has been a day in the comic book industry. And it's, unfortunately, red-faced me, we didn't break the news, but man, we have to tip the hat to our distinguished peers who are out there doing the job in the comic book industry. And with us today, we have Chris from Bleeding Cool. Chris, welcome to the program. How are you doing, sir?
Thanks, RJ. I'm doing pretty good. A little worn out. The news did pick up, and we were happy to be a part of it, really. It just kind of fell in our laps, so to speak, and a lot of people talking about it today.
Did you get much sleep last night? I mean, because this went up yesterday afternoon, and I know the traffic had to be spiking right about then.
The traffic was crazy. I wound up getting on, supposed to get on a couple of live streams last night. I wound up getting on one, and it went late, as they tend to do. And I had to wind down. I'm one of these guys that I take melatonin to go to sleep, and it required a couple of hours afterwards to just kind of wind down and get some rest. But yeah, it's been neat. I think really it's not that big a story in the larger picture, because we've all known this sort of thing is going on. It's just to have someone that has gotten inside the secret group and showing things that they were privy to, and then contrasting them with the things that were going on publicly. It really just sort of adds a little more foundation to the things we've already suspected.
Well, yeah, but I mean, we all know somebody killed Jimmy Hoffa too, but if somebody told us where the body was and we found it, that would be exciting. So that's kind of like where we are tonight, I think. And speaking of traffic, before we even tell everybody what it is we're talking about, your site got bombarded with so much of it today that it was kind of hard to keep it up. Are you guys back up and functioning right now?
Wow, that's a good question. I just got off another interview that was completely unrelated, so it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to check. Let's see. No, we're there. We're rocking and rolling. What was going on today was a very unusual. I mean, the traffic was higher than it was yesterday, so it was probably our biggest day of the week so far. But it wasn't our biggest day ever, and we've been able to sustain high rates of traffic. You've got a website. You've probably. I go to Critical Blast, so I'm sure that you guys have had to increase your bandwidth before. There's a cost to that, and yes. We've done that too. I guess we're fortunate. It's a good problem to have. So we should have been able to sustain the amount of traffic we were getting today initially without any problem. But there were some unusual spikes going on. That's really all I can say about it. I don't know what else to make of it. I was on the phone for about an hour and a half with my tech people and our hosting company, and we just worked it out. We wound up having to put some precautions in place, and within about 25-30 minutes, things were back to normal. And the traffic has actually increased since then. I think this story has kind of had a slow roll out, and it's kind of getting spread by the people who affirmed what they thought, and the people who are quickly trying to deny, the story, or even suspecting that all the screen grabs are fake or whatever. I mean, I can't keep up with all the hubbub that's going on about it, really.
And for those watching wondering what the story is, Penny Parker, obviously a pseudonym, who writes for Bleeding Cool, got inside of a private Facebook group for women in comics, and pretty much found the holy grail, so to speak, of conspiracy theories, where we know that people talk about certain comic pros and start attacking them with a coordinated effort. Well, this is apparently the war room where all of that would start to take place. And the article in question is the first link in our description below, so we encourage you to click on that and head over to Bleeding Cool and follow up on that. I was monitoring Twitter today from my alt account that I don't tweet from, so I can't get blocked from. And I did not
That's smart.
you got to have one.
That's a good strategy.
I didn't see a lot of interesting traffic or unusual traffic from the usual suspects, but I did see two things. One, I saw Gail Simone, whose name was, first and foremost on the list of this Whisper Network, as it's being called, tweeting about anything and everything every 30 seconds except this matter or anything to do with comic books. It was all microwave tea today.
Microwave tea. What an awesome,
tea.
Interesting, fascinating subject. Well, there were some pros and some tertiary orbiters that came out, mostly white knights and male feminists, and that came and immediately were trying to lay the smack down and tell us how this isn't anything and so on. And if I could make one correction, RJ, actually it's not so much a correction, it's a clarification. This is not a private Facebook group, which you can find private Facebook groups that have the little padlock on them and you can request access to them. This is a secret Facebook group, meaning you can't even find it if you search for it. You have to be invited to this. It is completely closed off, cannot be found, cannot even, you won't find the header or anything to this unless you have been invited. So, and there are secret Facebook groups. I encourage your viewers to look this up. So this is, it would be one thing if it were a private group. Do you know what I mean? Like, in other words, I'm a member of some private groups, and it's just because we're having conversations between people that just need to know that information, right? I wouldn't want my Gmail account to be open to everybody. So it's a private, there's private access. You have to have that password and you have to be a member of it. But a secret one it's by invitation only, and then the moderators have to approve you as you come in. So it's one extra level. And why I think that's important is that tells me that this was an exclusive secret club, like your Hellfire Club or whatever other Bond villain type thing you want to come up with, and that's no pun intended towards one of the creators that's in this group, Bond villain. But I would say that it adds a layer to it that means that these people were talking about and discussing things that they did not want anyone to even accidentally read. And it reminds me, back in 2017, I know you've been around for a little while doing this, RJ. You remember when Comicsgate sort of broke, and it was when Richard Meyer he had his channel, Diversity in Comics, which was a tongue-in-cheek commentary on the identity politics that were growing and continuing to increase in the major publishers. And a couple of people, do you remember the people that were involved in that, were in a private group talking about, hey, why don't you take a swing at Richard at the next convention and we'll get him thrown out or whatever, because surely he'll respond. Yeah. And actually, it was John De La Rose that shot, screen captured the video and everything and shared it. And that became Comicsgate, because they were trying to keep Richard they were actually trying to silence a critic. Now, whether Richard was doing it properly or civilly or anything like that, I mean, there's a thing called free speech, and free speech is about protecting speech that's unpopular. And it's unfortunate that we still have these same types of people, except this is in a women's group, that want to not only stifle critics like you, like me, like Bounding Into Comics, like One Angry Gamer. I mean, we could go on. The Splintering, there's several websites, Society Reviews, and are colluding not only with one another, but Heidi McDonald of The Beat is in this group. I don't know that Rich Johnston is in the group, but there is some damning statements made by Rich about Alex DeCampi, who really seems, if all of this is, if the veracity is at 100% like I think it is, seems to be almost the ringleader to some of these attacks on male comic pros. I know you've noticed that.
Yeah, now she was whistling past the graveyard this morning, in my opinion, just by acknowledging the article without acknowledging the article and saying, "Ooh, I'm a Illuminati leader, guys. Get your orders from me." Which I've seen that kind of thing before. It's sort of passive aggressive, though it doesn't mean anything to me. I'm going to go on about my day, and then nothing else goes on about
her and Gail Simone are both very good at that, aren't they?
Very, very, very good. So, have you been made privy to the membership list from Penny's work on this? Were these all women in comics professionals? Because it was 400. I didn't know that there was 400 women in comics, period.
443 to be precise. I think what you have, I mean, does Alex DeCampi write for anybody anymore? I mean, I don't even know. I do not have the entire list in front of me. I know several more names that are coming out. There's several more files to go. There's a lot more material. But my source, Penny, you're spot on correct. Penny is keeping her identity anonymous, and we've been in communication off and on now for a couple of weeks and going through this, and we've just kind of got a slow rollout. But a little bit of it is I'm at the mercy of when Penny comes in to put it all together. I can't tell her story, so she's going to have to do that, and we're working on part 2 now.
And the reason I asked if they were all professionals, because the follow-up to that is obviously, is Penny a female professional in the comics industry?
The reason Penny got, what can I say?
Or was she invited by someone who said, hey, you should probably see this?
Penny is one of those people that was in the social circles of many of these women due to her position.
Okay.
So I can definitely say that. And, you know, because, like, for instance, you have Gail Simone, you have Mags Visaggio. You have these ladies who are actual creators. And then you have people like, again, Heidi McDonald, who's just a journalist who runs actually a major comic. I don't want to diminish her position. She runs a major comic book website, comics-centered website. So you don't necessarily have to be on the creative teams or work for one of the publishers. Heather Marie, which is what Heather Antos goes by in this group on her Facebook. So, you know, it's comics creators, it's comics, people in that same orbit that are in those same social circles. And I believe that's how Penny got her access, was through being associated with someone else that is very intimate with the industry.
Okay. Have you heard anything at all from the men who were targeted in just what we've seen so far? I haven't seen anything from Cullen Bunn. I haven't seen anything from... name's escaping me now. Mac Bemis. Have any of them said, wow, this is, you know...
We've received some private messages that I couldn't get into, but just sort of rooting for us, if you will. You know, I think that this is one of those long time coming things. We've had some very tight coverage of some of the women that are mentioned in the article. And one of them involved in Gamergate and so on. And we've been very critical of the things that happened with her, specifically Zoe Quinn.
Yes.
And I think that there are a lot of men who are just very happy that we have put this out there. Now, has that put a target on my back? Possibly. But I don't work in comics, and the only thing that I'm doing is running an internet journal, just like you, that has dozens of contributors that write their own opinions about things. Sometimes I agree with them, sometimes I don't. I I like it that some of our contributors have contrary opinions. Obviously, our website is based on as a satire of Bleeding Cool,
Sure.
which my motto is if you have to tell people you're cool, you probably aren't. And as we all know, Bleeding Cool has been pitching from a very progressive inclusion, diversity sort of attitude, and mocked people who care about merit in comic books, people who care about the legacy characters, people who are resistant to some of the diversity hires and progressive changes for the sake of diversity to some of the legacy characters. And we have come at it, we've given voice to the people who are called the the phobes, the the igots, and whatever. We've given voice to them because there's a lot of reasonable voices. But just like there are a lot of unreasonable, angry voices on the side that are pushing so hard for inclusion, they're very intolerant. There are voices that are very intolerant. But just like this recent Harper's letter, you have people on both sides of the political, or actually of all shades of political persuasions, who are sick of this cancel culture, blacklisting, and so on that we've all been seeing, and the crowdfund project that I'm actually working on with Eisner Award-winning Mike Barron just got canceled over at Reddit in front of 1.3 million comic book fans because of our fair coverage to the Comicsgate movement. So because there are some people in Comicsgate who are, ugly or uncivil sometimes, but the same is said of the people who are anti-Comicsgate. I mean, and you can look at some of the screen grabs from this article and say, this is disgusting behavior. And believe me, none of those people identify as pro-Comicsgate. And my good buddy, John Layman, the creator of Chew, boy, he's totally anti-Comicsgate. But have you ever seen some of his tweets? So it really, I would be okay with just canceling cancel culture. And if everybody wants to be venomous towards one another, let's just do it out in the open. But the secret Facebook groups and the subtle coordinated attacks on male pros, hey, even the ones that are out there doing those empty pledges, they're coming for you. This is about your livelihood, guys. It doesn't matter what your politics are. These days now, you can lose your job just because you liked a Trump tweet. It's ridiculous. And this is part of our efforts to kind of push back on that, at least to try and hold the floodgates back, because it's really gotten out of hand, RJ.
Now, it looks to me like there's been, the last 3 weeks have been crazy as far as targeting goes, because all of a sudden it was almost every male comic pro in the industry had a Me Too aimed at them, and the ones that didn't were on their knees as quickly as they could, saying, please don't hurt me. But the targeting I've seen in the past 2 days seems to be no longer at a person, but at a publisher. And you had one of the tweets in the article, which was from Mag Saggio, aimed at Dynamite Comics. Mm-hmm. And then just last night, I was doing the review on the upcoming Betty Page comic book by Carla Pacheco, and checking her out, she had a tweet that, now that the first book is coming out, she's going to honor her commitment, but she's no longer going to do any work for Dynamite, and just vaguely gives this whole transphobic reasoning for it, which lets the imagination pick its own reasons for why that is. Do you know if there's anything, has Penny said, obviously she hadn't written the other part, but perhaps she's spoken about some of the other things she's seen. Do you know if there's anything about Dynamite coming out of this?
Well, I mean, Dynamite is a big player, and Dynamite is a target. And it's unfortunate because, they just want to make fun comic books with, John Carter, Betty Page, Red Sonja. These are all titles that are known for some cheesecake, right? Which is almost verboten now at the big two and some of the other major publishers, which is kind of a shame. But I think that people have infiltrated some of these other publishers who are angry. I mean, every time some artist does a cheesecake-worthy cover, you've got the Twitterati coming out and just talking about how disgusting it is. But these people have always existed. Who cares what you think about Ms. Marvel's costume? Don't buy it, right? I remember I was in a Facebook group recently that Mark Wade is a member of too, and Mark kind of snapped back at me and then wound up apologizing. Mark's a great writer, but he's got a hot temper. But my analogy for this, when people are trying to clap back on things they don't like and try to get them stopped, my thought is this: if we were at a movie and it was a horror movie and it was something disgusting happened, whether it was a rape scene or someone being beheaded or flayed alive or whatever, could someone that's triggered by that stand up and demand that the movie be stopped and no longer have any tickets sold for it? Or should they just get up and leave? If it's not for you, get out. That's all. We want to stay here. We want the Betty Page books. We want the Red Sonja books. And we can only hope that Dynamite doesn't have a great awakening. I was a little worried about that because I was a fan of Amy Chu's Red Sonja book, but that Mark Russell book, it's like they said, we got to do the Gail Simone thing and tamp down the cheesecake aspects of this. I think they've lightened up a little bit, but, I don't try to shut Dynamite down because I think that their book's getting too woke. So why is Mags Visaggio trying to shut down Dynamite because someone from Dynamite liked or did a super chat donation to a CG-related YouTube video? I mean, that's ridiculous. And that
I think Dynamite goes both ways.
They do, of course they do. I mean, it's business.
They're putting together a humble bundle box for Black Lives Matter, and now you've got people on the CG side saying, "What's Dynamite doing? Oh my God! Well, I'm canceling all my subscriptions." That's like, well, maybe Dynamite is just the entire time saying, "Hey, there's people who buy comics. Let's sell them comics."
Right. They're doing that humble bundle with BLM, and I think Gail Simone's involved, and that's fine because if you don't like that, my advice to you is not to cancel Dynamite. My advice to you is do not get that humble bundle. That's it. Go get the next Dynamite comic that you like. I know that Art T. Bear or Billy Tucci has got a Miss Fury comic coming out. Go get the Miss Fury book. Ethan Van Sciver's doing work with Dynamite. Go get that stuff. You don't have to like everything. That's as though if my wife served a dish of food and I didn't like one of the items on the dish, what am I going to throw the plate at her? I mean, that's ridiculous. And to have these kind of spoiled brat, ugly, disgusting, we're watching you, Dynamite. You liked a video of people we don't like. Screw you. Get out of here. Get out of comics. If you get that easily triggered that you want to shut down a publisher because they don't like the things you like, how about you just don't work for them and shut your mouth?
Yeah, and I haven't taken count recently, but I think the number of major publishers who can pay you something that you can actually make a living wage off of, probably less than 10. So I could be wrong, but with them that small, why would you, as a comics professional, Mags Visaggio, go out and intentionally burn bridges with publishers who maybe you're not working with right now, but historically, you have to jump from company to company as any comic professional when one contract ends and another one has to be started up.
That's a great point, RJ. I don't understand the mentality of a comics professional. She's a freelancer for Marvel, right? She just had a television series based on her original work on Sci-Fi. Yes, it got canceled early. Yes, it was the lowest rated sci-fi show in history. But you know how many sci-fi series I've ever had? Goose Egg. So why can't she just leave Dynamite alone? Why do it publicly? That, I think, is the key, RJ. If I had a problem with you, wouldn't it be better for me to either just ignore you or maybe send you a message privately to see if we can work things out, or at least ask you about this problem, as opposed to just doing this really weird, vague, threatening type of public tweet. I mean, that's disgusting. And that's the kind of behavior that a lot of these mean girls in this secret group have been doing.
Yeah. Now, I've seen several different sites cover your article today, so congratulations. That's
Thanks.
driven your way.
True.
Obviously, it was on the Ethan Van Sciver stream last night. It was a big deal there. It was on the Literature Devil channel this morning, and it's always interesting because you watch the people scroll through the beginning of it, and you're like, okay, well, this is, an anonymous source. Okay, this is a private Facebook group. Maybe it's this, maybe it's that. Who knows? They get through all the introductory stuff, and every single time, as soon as they get to that Alex DeCampi, Simon & Schuster quote, it's like, holy crap, this is serious stuff. And the quote I'm talking about is, of course, where he's talking back in 2017-18 about Richard C. Meyer's Jawbreaker book. And this was right after Antarctic had been forced to drop it. And I'm going to say forced to drop it because that's what happened in my mind.
Sure.
And I believe it was John Malin or I can't remember the other guy's name, who came out and tweeted that, hey, don't worry about it. It's going to be distributed by Simon & Schuster. And she had picked up on that saying, hey, if it's going to be distributed by Simon & Schuster, let me know because I got friends there and I'll go talk to my people and we'll make sure that they don't carry it, which is a flat out admission of, I'm going to make sure that they don't carry it.
It's insane that it happens, and it happens so publicly. I mean, yes, some of these things were private, but there's public tweets and Facebook posts that back this stuff up. And what I find interesting, RJ, is this thing with Meyer. CBR, Comic Book Resources, will ban you if you talk on their forums about Jawbreakers or Richard Meyer. Now, this is because Richard said some very salty, rude things about Mags Visaggio and her gender, and Heather Antos, and how she got to the position that she is. Now, do I agree with what Richard said? Well, no. Did I think it was humorous? Maybe. I don't remember. But at the same time, does that mean that you can't even talk about one of the biggest consumer movements in the comic book industry without getting banned from Comic Book Resources, much less the comic books Reddit, like I got banned? It's insane. And I shared with you a link to a page in our chat here. Back in June, and this has been 2 years ago, when I wrote a column called Dealing with the PC Culture That's Infested Comic Book Culture. And it gets into this whole thing with CBR, but back then it's got tweets from Tom Brevoort, Rob Sheridan, Gabby Rivera, Nick Spencer, Max Bemis, who attacked Doug Ernst, one of the original OG Comicsgate, Mark Waid, Judd Emerson, Kurt Busiek, who has got probably one of the worst cases of TDS I've ever seen. Daryl Io, we haven't heard from him in a while. Of course, Gail Simone. Mags was back there looking to do some dental work with her baseball bat. Kara Andrews, who I think has since deleted his Twitter. David F. Walker. And back then, so much heat was brought from that article among dozens of other articles, I'm sure by you guys and others, and videos, that DC Comics came out with a social media policy. And then when Peter Simeti from Alterna came out with a social media policy, he caught hell about it. And I was like, why didn't you give DC hell about it? Maybe because you work for DC. So there's this Mean Girls Club, but there's also the Mean Boys Club. And I think the Mean Boys Club has been cowed by the Mean Girls Club. Now, Tom King is a member of it, so he probably readily did his empty pledge for the ladies. But this is all just shenanigans and kabuki theater. They don't want people who they disagree with to work in this industry, which is why the crowdfunding of comics has gotten so popular and massive. I thought we were going to catch a lot of hell over the story about Ethan Van Sciver's Cyberfrog. I think we published that Sunday. Cyberfrog #2, that crowdfund is over almost $1.1 million now. That's incredible. And that's not making it in the comic book news, mainstream news? Nope. Why not?
Because they're offended. I'm old enough that I can make this kind of reference. This would be sort of like if you were offended at the humor of Andrew Dice Clay, who left no four-letter word unturned when it was kind of a comedy act.
Sure.
And then find out that he's cast in a movie that wins an Oscar for some reason. And you don't talk about the Oscar because you're angry that Andrew Dice Clay used the C word in a joke on stage and you got triggered by it. It's completely insane.
It's petty.
And the $1 million is again astounding because I'm old enough to remember when just 3 years ago we wrote an article on the Richard C. Meyer Jawbreakers thing. I was like, how do you publish a comic when nobody wants you to and it's broken $260,000 in pledges? And what's interesting on that is that this was the same time that the private Facebook group of the retailers was discovered.
Yeah, right.
They were talking about how they're not going to carry it even if the customers ask for it. So as part of that article, we called up a law professor at Washington University here in St. Louis who specializes in torts and in the Sherman Act and said, hey, what is this? And now he came out and he said, well, that's probably it's a legal boycott. It's sort of like the thing where, the cable company's deregulated and there's only one in your town. There's nothing you can do about it. It's perfectly legal for them to do that kind of a thing. But what's also interesting is that he said, but as for this thing that you're talking about with Mark Wade, now that borders on tortious interference, and I would say that the man has a case for that. This was before there was ever a talk about tortious interference case. So from the get-go, this is something that, flipped the switch with a lawyer who's looking the thing over from a normie perspective and says, oh, hey, he's a writer. Yeah, no, you can't do that.
Exactly. And I think what it gets down to, RJ, is this is just ugly, petty, gross behavior, right? And we've sort of peeled back a layer where they've kind of done these things in the shadows. If you are fighting the good fight, if you are being noble, you don't hide what you're doing, right? Unless it's just strictly strategic to spring on somebody as a surprise or something like that. This is being done with subterfuge. This is being done in the shadows. Those retailers you mentioned, that's petty. It's your store, you carry what you want, but trying to do it a coordinated effort like that, even if it's not illegal, that's really, really petty. So the layers are being peeled back. Social media has allowed us all to communicate a lot easier, but it's also allowing these people to do coordinated attacks and boycotts and so on. And going back to Mags and her gross thing that she said about Dynamite, just because the CEO has some beliefs or supports something that she doesn't, man, that's just trashy behavior. And I want people to know about it. And obviously she does, or she wouldn't do it on her public Twitter. You can block all the people you want, but if I sign out of Twitter, I can look at everything. So I think that these people have gotten really comfortable thinking that they can say these things publicly and not everybody can see them. But I mean, that's just stupidity. That is a low IQ decision.
I took her tweet and we reminded everybody that sort of a using her own pattern in words kind of thing about, think about that and be aware that this person did this. Just reminded everybody that on Thanksgiving of 2018, she conspired to triple strike Richard C. Meyer's YouTube channel because she thought that he'd be spending time with family and wouldn't notice it. Which, by the way, triple strike, 3 strikes on a copyright strike in that sort of time would have totally eliminated his channel and he would not have been able to get it back. Fortunately, Richard C. Meyer is not quite normal and wasn't spending time with family and noticed it and was able to head it off. But
well, none of us are normal. That's the thing. I get it that, I'm not normal. You're not. None of us are normal, right? What is normal? We've all got our little idiosyncrasies. We all do things a little weird.
We're
Richard
in the
Meyer.
comic book industry and talking about normal, for God's sake.
Hey, we're nerds.
Yeah.
But the thing is that you don't have to like somebody to be respectful. And it's not respectful to say, I don't like you, so I'm going to try to destroy your revenue stream. I'm going to try to hurt your livelihood or your bottom line. I'm going to try to destroy your YouTube channel or your book deal or your comic book deal and all this kind of stuff, or get you thrown out of a convention. Why don't you just let things happen naturally and either root against or root for? You don't have to be this active participant that's trying to manipulate the system and play God. Let these things rise and fall on their own merit. Let Richard rise and fall of his own efforts. And if he's doing something that's causing harm to someone, you can point that out. But not pointing out, hey, I'm going to do 3 copyright strikes for funsies. That's gross. That's disrespectful. That's immature.
Exactly. I am hoping, very hopeful. I think a lot of people are excited about what they've read so far.
Yeah, me too.
I think it's ignited something that they're going to want more of. Teasing those folders at the end of the article is definitely going to make people want to come back. So hopefully Penny is able to continue this at a pace where we'll be able to keep that fire going, where you'll be able to see how what I did there. I just made myself part of it, where you'll be able to keep that fire going. What it reminds me of is I'm fortunate enough. I've interviewed a lot of people, and one of them was Andrew Breitbart. And what he explained when they started up the Breitbart TV channel was that he was given this video, which was an undercover expose video. And
O'Keefe?
like, no, you don't dump the video. You dump a little bit of the video, and you get people excited, and then you dump the next little bit of the video. So I'm kind of hoping that's what y'all's plan is here, where you're just going to keep doling it out just enough to keep us coming back until it's all played out, and then it's going to be an epic saga.
Well, RJ, I appreciate that. I mean, obviously there's other news going on than just talking about the Mean Girls, but we kind of slowed down our news today just so people would stick with this story for a while. There is a lot of momentum. There is a lot of traffic going on. It's being talked about. I'm sure there's some Facebook posts being deleted as we speak. And whatever, you know, at the end of the day, and I don't care for that saying, but hopefully what manages to happen to come out of all this is that people take a second look or reassess their behavior, their attitudes towards other people. The comic book industry is dying, or it's in critical condition, and it only turns people off when they see this kind of behavior, right? And we could ignore it. We could ignore it like Games Radar does, or formerly Newsarama. We could ignore it like CBR. We could shill for everything that Disney and Marvel and DC do. But the thing is they're doing these things publicly on their social media, and that's where the fans are. So Disney can pretend that their creators aren't being a-holes, but they are, or not all of them, but many of them are. So our hope, and I know you're this way too, is that by shining a disinfectant light on this, that the cockroaches will get away, right? Obviously, I'm not afraid to come out and say what I think, and you aren't either. But I'm also not attacking these people unless you count holding up what they're doing as attacking, right? We don't make up names about them. I don't call people phobes and ists and all that kind of stupidity. I just show people what they do, and I give you my opinion about it without being a name-calling, insulting type of person. You guys do the same. I mean, there's a lot of, I almost consider us to be sort of the alternative underground, but really everything seems to be going that way. People are looking for an opinion that doesn't fall in line with what Disney marketing sent the press release out to say, with a couple of tongue-in-cheek jokes, right? And
I try to keep, things as fair and balanced. Don't mean to say it like that, but that's how we do it at Critical Blast as possible. And it's been interesting because I've got a more conservative outlook on things. We've had writers who were more liberal outlook, and we got along most of the time fine. But I will say that whenever, if one of the left-leaning writers puts something out on the site with a left-leaning opinion, it was fine. I would never censor anybody.
Right.
When I published something with a right-leaning opinion, I would get emails from my other writers, and I would say, "This is great. Why don't you reformat this just a little bit and put a counter article out there and support it?" They would rather quit. They walked away. So I lost, I've lost a couple of writers at the very least I can call off the top of my head over an Oscar speech, and I came out and talked about the contract writers that they wanted to put in there, and the ladies on the team were like, "How can you possibly say that this is a bad idea?" I'm like, "Well, I said it because in the article and this impassioned email, I'm like, this is beautiful. Write this, change this without being a letter and publish it, and we'll put it right out there, and it'll get more traffic than mine did, and you'll make a good case." Rather quit. So it's frustrating.
It is.
Writers anymore.
Well, and it's a shame. We've had writers come and go. One was probably conservative too, but he had his own thoughts about or how he dealt with. I don't want to get too much into it, but I had one writer that was pretty prolific, but he was doing it for his own, obviously for his own sake. A lot of things we do for, out there is for selfish reasons. But then, he was doing some things that I just completely disagreed with when it comes to other independent creators, so we had to part ways over that. Didn't have a problem with his writing, although there were a few stories he posted into the pending queue that I just said, hey, we're not going to publish that, right? Because I'm like you. I'm probably a bit more libertarian. I just want the government to stay out of my bedroom, out of my refrigerator, out of my property, leave us alone.
I don't want the courts to haul me in for libel.
No, or for not wearing a mask. But also, I've got some great writers who don't get into any of that. I mean, like Alec Lloyd writes some just fantastic pieces. He's an accomplished author. Brian Niemeyer. But I've got some OG guys like Captain Frugal that occasionally will post stuff, and Avi Green. I just, as a courtesy, I just make sure that I can cross-post his stuff. Avi's got his own blog, but it aligns. So, and Ichibaka too. They align. We've got a new guy, Dr. Andy, who's doing sort of looking at the MCU movies from a conservative lens. I think some fun people, but then I've got guys like Mandy and Megan, John, who are writing, John Pallister, who are writing really just, it's strictly news. It's just something they're interested in, the new Transformers thing on Netflix, or this comic book, or movie productions rolling back in and things like that. But all of it at the end of the day are things that I'm interested in too, right? And we've had some guys that we parted ways with just over differences, but it's always been, other than that one incident, it's always been them leaving on their own terms. And we can have disagreements and be reasonable about it. But, I'm just trying to keep the website afloat and keep telling stories that I think our readers are going to be interested in. And this seemed like a really hot story that our readers, it turns out, even our haters are very interested in. So let's keep it going. I'll send you a direct message when the next one's about to drop, so you can check it out before we share it on our socials. And hopefully it'll be as hot. Yeah.
Well, congratulations on the story. And thank you very much for coming on our channel. Technically, we should be competitors, but this is a nerd industry. We help each other out here, and I'm glad for it, because I'm the one receiving usually more than I am giving. For everybody watching in the chat, definitely hit the link below in the description. Go out there and read the entirety of the article out on Bleeding Cool. And below that, if you'd like to help us out, Critical Blast is also a publishing house. And this is, we actually have a new anthology out called The Devil You Know on Amazon. I don't have copies yet, but I'm pushing Bulletproof Origins right now. This is our hardcover YA novel by Stephen J. Mitchell. And I'm pushing this because Stephen is a single dad of a teenage daughter, and he's been job displaced through COVID right now. So he's trying to keep the lights on. We have a link to this in our description below. His contract has been up to 95% of the royalties. So
good for him.
We can sell more books and kind of keep him, keeping his family together. I appreciate it. It's about a young boy, 16 years old, who wakes up one day to find out he's bulletproof, and he lives in a world of superheroes, so he's going to become one. Unfortunately, young Cody Haywood has the attention span of a ferret on pixie sticks because he has undiagnosed ADHD, and he requires the assistance of his girlfriend and his best friend to keep his focus going, or the terrorists who want to dismantle him and find out why he's bulletproof will succeed. Chris, thank you again for coming on here. Everybody else, we're getting ready to go into a second live stream here in about 10 minutes with the creators of Vestry, so we hope you'll come back to that. We will definitely be watching Bleeding Pool for more.
Thanks for having me, RJ. Thanks, everybody.